Hamish Galloway is another to embrace the Outgro biological system. His father had farmed locally, but Hamish wanted a property with more potential and bought land that met his goals, though he wasn't impressed with its state when he first took it on.
One of the things I noticed when we first moved onto this farm, we were growing a lot of clumps and the soil was very consolidated, and I couldn't work out why until I started using a good old spade, which is a good old traditional tool we don't use enough. And I started digging, finding we had a huge compaction layer between the clumps that wasn't allowing the roots to get down and the soil to breathe. So it's one thing that I'd like to see all farmers actually go out and have a dig on their farm and see exactly what's going on. And as a farmer, you'll suddenly realise what's good and what's not just by looking what it should be.
And Hamish had his reservations about the previous fertiliser program applied to the farm.
I think the history was probably a lot of DAP being used. There wasn't a lot of lime being used. We had, one of the signs where the cows would go into the paddocks. They would spend only probably 5 or 10 minutes in there and they wouldn't like what they saw, even though it was nice long grass. They didn't want to eat it, and they'd greet us back at the cowshed before we'd even finished milking, which was a bit of a hassle.
Hamish approached Outgro to develop a treatment to rectify the problems and looked for results.
We've been on the Outgro system 4 years now. We found once we got onto the fine ground fertiliser, we did some trial plots and used a lot of available fertiliser in a fine form and a liquid, that we started seeing huge responses. And we also inoculated the soil with some inoculums and found it was a staggering within 2 to 3 weeks the change in the soil, which we monitored a lot over the period of 6 months when we first started. We had some trialled areas that we were left as controls, but over a period of time we felt we were neglecting them and went back to treating the whole farm.
After that initial application, improvements became apparent very quickly.
You can see an impact within a couple of weeks. I know it sounds like you can be dreaming of it, but if you're monitoring all the time, you can actually see the worm population, you can see the roots starting to penetrate further into the soil, and especially the cow behaviour is probably the biggest thing. You can get calcium into the soil quite quickly, and hence you get more sugar, and then the cows enjoy what they eat more. So the clover in this paddock is showing a lot of nodules. Pink nodules, they're healthy, large, and especially this paddock stays dark green and has got a full of nitrogen from the atmosphere as it gets fixed that it needs for its requirement.
But Hamish Galloway has goals well beyond milk production. He sees the Outgro system also meeting the needs of farming in the future.
For the next generations, we've got 2 young kids, and we've got away from a lot of chemicals. We still use a few glyphosate, but we buffer them with humic acid and fulvic. But for them, I want to leave it in a better place for them to be able to live, waterways that are clean. I think it doesn't just impact the pasture and our cow health, but also waterways and others that are farming and eating our products.